And we're still fighting to lower it even further. We're fighting to lower health care cost, education costs, to give just a little more breathing room, as my dad would say, to ordinary families like the one I grew up in.
And that was President Biden touting his economic policy in Wisconsin yesterday as part of his campaign tour in the battleground states. Joining us right now is Wisconsin Congressman Scott Fitzgerald, a member of the House Financial Services and Judiciary Committees. Congressman, your reaction to the president on this economy?
Yeah, I think, Maria, the problem the administration has right now is every time they march President Biden out to the podium, and I listened to the entire speech that he delivered in Milwaukee yesterday, it doesn't match up with what people are seeing on the street, right? Premium is above $4 a gallon right now in Wisconsin. And if you go to the local grocery store, everything is doubled or tripled in some instances around some of the, certainly produce, dairy, eggs, everything is not what the president is saying, just doesn't line up with what the reality is in Wisconsin right now.
Yeah, and a lot of people are questioning what this means for these tax increases that the president is planning. I mean, if you're going to insert $5.5 trillion in new taxes on an economy that is already questionable, what does that do to the macro story? And obviously, he's not going to be able to raise taxes this year. You and your colleagues will stop it, but he's giving us an indication of the next 4 years, right? Should he win re-election?
If you implemented what the president's budget is that he just rolled out, you would add somewhere in excess of $50 trillion for a total that, you know, we're all very concerned about right now, and he just continues to spend, which is going to add to the inflationary issues.
White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre shutting down reporters from former special counsel Robert Hur's testimony. The whole conversation she wants shut down on Biden's handling of classified documents yesterday. Watch this.
It's a case closed. You heard from my colleague yesterday, Ian Sams, who is the spokesperson for White House counsel. I just don't have anything else to add. The case is closed.
Congressman, I know you questioned Robert Hur on the president's memory. Watch this.
Did you find that the president was senile?
I did not. That conclusion does not appear in my report, Congressman.
You felt, though, that the president's memory or lack thereof was a critical reason to decline prosecution.
My report, to the extent that it addresses the president's memory gaps that we identified and the evidence that we obtained during our investigation, they are addressed in the context of determining how the jury would perceive, receive, and consider evidence relating to whether or not the president had willful intent when it came to retaining or disclosing national defense information.
I didn't understand that answer, Congressman. Tell us more about what you got from this testimony, because we're talking about the president's mental capacity when he took the documents, right? And that was when he was senator. So what? If a jury today says, oh, this is a guy with a bad memory, an elderly man with a bad memory, so what? I mean, he didn't have a bad memory and wasn't elderly when he took the documents, right, out of the secret room?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that Judiciary Committee was trying to do is establish what was the president's mental state, which is why I asked that question, and other members asked similar questions to that. But, Maria, if it was me or anybody else that works in government, and we had classified documents in 6 different locations in multiple states, okay, and it was discovered or disclosed, we would be in deep, deep trouble right now. And what that testimony, certainly, I think, with the special counsel, what he relayed to the committee was that his mental state was so fragile that if they had put him or asked him to appear in front of a jury, that there is no way that he would have been able to recall what he needed to somehow dismiss that. I mean, that from a legal perspective, it just doesn't make any sense. And then on top of that, the second thing I thought that Chairman Jordan did a really good job of kind of underscoring is the idea that there was a motive. We all know what it was. It was the book. So he kept referring to his memoirs or his notes when he talked to this ghostwriter. Again, another thing that would have absolutely put anyone else that works in government in hot water.
Where does your impeachment inquiry stand at this point against President Biden? I mean, look, Hunter Biden has declined the invitation to testify at a House Oversight Committee next week regarding the Biden family influence peddling that the House Oversight and Judiciary Committees have been telling us. Chairman James Comer said that the committee has called Hunter Biden's bluff and that Hunter Biden for months was stating that he wanted a public hearing, but now he is refusing to come. And John Solomon over at Just the News is reporting that Hunter Biden and his partners aided the Chinese to bid to corner nuclear energy in the United States, according to memos. John Solomon is reporting this this morning, which seems like a big story, that his father was still vice president and Hunter Biden and his partners tried unsuccessfully to help a Chinese energy company acquire one of the U.S.'s premier nuclear technology companies in a secret attempt to control the global market. Are you looking at this, and where does the impeachment stand now, given Hunter Biden says he's not coming next week?
Well, let me tell you why he's not coming. My take, at least, is that the closed-door deposition, of which I sat through 3 hours of Hunter Biden answering questions, it didn't go well. It didn't go well at all.
For who?
A lot of the things that he told the attorneys in the room that day are completely conflicting with evidence that oversight and judiciary already has in their hands. So I'm sure that they went back after that deposition and said, we don't know if we want to do this public testimony. Much different type of environment. Members of Congress can be a little more animated and kind of go right for the jugular in that environment. And based on the lies that were told under that deposition, with him being sworn in the way he was, I think they have great concern about putting him out there right now.
I see. Real quick, your opinion.
Congressman, I mean, look, you look at a state like your home state, Wisconsin. I mean, we had about 78,000 votes. It was the margin of victory for President Trump in 2016, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan. As you look at these issues, the issues affecting Main Street America, people concerned about Hunter Biden and Joe Biden's complicity, but also people looking at the average economy not working for everyday Americans. How do you feel that plays out in your home state as we start turning our eyes towards the general election?
Well, we just saw Senator Ron Johnson get reelected in a statewide election. So there is a path, absolutely. And it was less than 78,000. It was a mere 24,000 votes. And what I would say to that is things changed during COVID. There were absolute accommodations that were made in some of the counties by specific clerks when it came to absentee ballots. That seems to be, it's going to be a little bit tighter this time, but I do believe there absolutely is a path for President Trump to win re-election in Wisconsin.
All right, we will leave it there. Congressman, it's good to see you this morning. Thanks very much.